A man in ancient Israel woke up at sunrise, walked 10 miles across rocky hills, worked the fields until sundown, and did this 6 days a week into his 80s. No supplements, no gym, no doctor, just food. And here is the part that will genuinely surprise you. The exact meals that kept him strong for 90 years are still sitting on grocery shelves today. Most people walk right past them every single week. Something is deeply wrong with how we eat now. You already feel it. The 3 o'clock crash, the stiff joints, the tired face in the mirror that looks older than it should. This is not normal aging. This is a body that has been cut off from its own history. And the people who wrote the oldest book on earth, who walked from Jerusalem to Jericho on foot, who lived long enough to hold their great-grandchildren, they did not forget. They ate the same 10 foods for 3,000 years. Meal number 4 is the one King Hezekiah reached for on his deathbed. Meal number 9 is the breakfast Jesus cooked on a beach. And the last one on this list is the food almost nobody today wants to eat. That may be the exact reason so many people feel the way they feel. If you are the kind of person who thinks deeper than most, who sees through the noise of modern food marketing, who actually wants to live long and live sharp, then subscribe to Taste of the Bible right now. This channel is built for the thinkers who refuse to follow the crowd. Hit the bell. New video every week. Let's get into meal number 1, because this is the one that built the working body of an entire civilization. Number 1, barley bread. Forget everything you know about bread. The loaf that built the bodies of ancient Israel had nothing in common with what sits in your kitchen today. It was dense, it was dark, it was alive, and it kept a shepherd full for 8 hours straight. Here is what most people miss. When Ruth gleaned in the fields of Boaz, it was not wheat, it was barley. When 5,000 people were fed on a hillside, the loaves were not wheat. Barley again. This was the food of the working class, and it built physical endurance into entire generations. That is not a coincidence. This is where everything changes. Barley carries a soluble fiber called beta-glucan that modern wheat has been bred to lose. Researchers have studied it for decades in connection with healthy cholesterol, steady blood sugar, and long-term heart wellness. In plain language, this grain does not spike you, does not crash you, and does not leave you hungry 40 minutes later. The ancient Israelites did not know the science. They just knew their bodies worked better. For 3,000 years. Now the uncomfortable truth. The bread in most grocery stores today would be unrecognizable to anyone who lived in the biblical world. Bleached, stripped, chemically conditioned. That is why so many people feel bloated and inflamed after every meal. Their bodies are asking for something that has not been on the table in 100 years. Fix it this week. Real stone ground barley flour is still sold. Traditional barley sourdough is still baked in small Middle Eastern bakeries. Cooked whole barley kernels, boiled like rice, and served under a stew is the same meal a family in Galilee put on the table on a Tuesday night. Simple. Heavy. Honest. And trust me, the next meal is the one somebody literally traded an inheritance for. Number 2, lentil stew. Imagine being so hungry you trade away your entire future for one bowl of soup. That actually happened. In Genesis, Esau came back from the hunt starving, walked into the tent, smelled his brother Jacob's pot simmering over the fire, and handed over the birthright of an entire lineage for a single serving of red lentil stew. One bowl. An inheritance gone. So ask the obvious question. What kind of stew makes a grown man do that? It was not fancy. Red lentils, onions, garlic, cumin, salt, and olive oil slow cooked in a clay pot until the lentils broke down into something thick and deep. That is it. And yet, this single dish fed the armies of Israel, the laborers of Egypt, and the shepherds of Persia for longer than any empire has ever stood. Here is what modern nutrition is quietly admitting. Lentils are one of the most protein-dense plant foods on Earth. They carry iron, folate, potassium, and a slow-release carbohydrate that holds energy steady for hours. Researchers studying the oldest living populations on the planet keep finding the same pattern. Legume stews at the center of the plate, decade after decade. And this is where the modern diet went wrong. People are living on fast protein and food designed to be eaten in the car. Their bodies are starved of the slow, dense nourishment that kept their ancestors strong. That is why the afternoon crash hits so hard. The body is asking for something it has not been given in a long time. Fix it tonight. A pot of lentil stew costs less than fast food, takes 40 minutes, and feeds a family for 2 days. Same recipe Jacob was stirring in Genesis, still works exactly the same. But hold on, because the next meal is the one modern science is only now catching up to, and it explains why entire Mediterranean villages outlive us by a decade. Number 3, olives and cold-pressed olive oil. There is a reason people in the Mediterranean still live into their 90s while the rest of the modern world gets sicker every year. It comes down to one tree. The olive tree is everywhere in Scripture. The dove brought an olive branch back to Noah. Kings were anointed with olive oil. Priests were anointed with olive oil. Every household in ancient Israel kept a clay jar of it by the door. But this is the part most people miss. That jar was not ceremonial. It was a daily food source, used at every meal, every day, for thousands of years. This will surprise you. When researchers started studying the longest living populations on Earth, they kept circling back to the same thing. Cold-pressed olive oil consumed daily in serious traditional amounts, not a drizzle once a week. A real amount. Every day. It is associated with heart health, brain support, reduced inflammation, and some of the lowest rates of age-related decline ever recorded. Here is the hard part. Most olive oil sold today is not what the Bible is talking about. A huge percentage is cut with cheaper oils, refined with chemicals, or pressed from olives that were old before they hit the mill. People buy it, drizzle it on pasta, and think they are eating the Mediterranean diet. They are not even close. Real olive oil is cold-pressed, harvested within the same year, stored in dark glass, and tastes slightly peppery at the back of your throat. That peppery kick is a compound called oleocanthal, studied for its natural anti-inflammatory properties. Pair a spoonful with a few cured olives and a torn piece of barley bread, and you have recreated the breakfast of the ancient world. We are 3 meals in, and the next one is the food an actual king reached for on his deathbed. Number 4. Figs. There is a moment in the Bible that genuinely changed how I look at this fruit. King Hezekiah is dying. The prophet Isaiah comes to him and says his time is up. Hezekiah weeps, prays, and Isaiah gives one very specific instruction. Take a cake of pressed figs and apply it to the affected area. The king recovers. He lives 15 more years. You can read that as spiritual, you can read that as symbolic, or you can read it a third way. The people of the ancient world knew something about figs that the modern world has completely forgotten. Figs are one of the oldest cultivated fruits on earth, older than wheat, older than grapes. Shepherds carried dried fig cakes into the hills because a handful could feed a man for a full day of walking. David was given 200 cakes of pressed figs as a military provision. 200. That tells you what this fruit meant to a working population. Here is where it gets interesting. Figs are dense in potassium, calcium, magnesium, and a specific prebiotic fiber that feeds the beneficial bacteria in the gut. Traditional Middle Eastern medicine associated figs with digestion, stamina, and recovery 2,000 years before anyone had the word microbiome. Modern researchers are only now confirming what those villages already knew. The modern trap is real. People buy cheap dried figs loaded with added sugar and preservatives and wonder why they feel nothing. Real dried figs are just figs, no sugar added. 2 or 3 in the afternoon with a handful of almonds is the same snack a traveler on the road to Damascus ate 4,000 years ago. Still works, still quietly powerful. Now stay with me, because the next one is the food an entire promised land was described by, and the modern version is almost worthless. Number 5, raw honey. When the promised land was described to Moses, the phrase was a land flowing with milk and honey. That image shaped the hope of an entire people for generations. But here is the brutal truth. The honey on your kitchen counter today has almost nothing in common with what that phrase is talking about. The honey of ancient Israel was wild, thick, dark, unfiltered. Taken from hives in rock crevices and tree hollows full of pollen, propolis, enzymes, and trace compounds the ancients respected like medicine. Samson found wild honey inside the carcass of a lion. John the Baptist lived on locusts and wild honey in the wilderness. This was sacred food. And this is the part that will genuinely stop you. Archaeologists have opened sealed jars of honey from Egyptian tombs more than 3,000 years old, and the honey inside was still edible. 3,000 years. No other food on earth does that. The ancients noticed, and they treated honey with the respect of something precious. Now compare that to your pantry. Most commercial honey is ultra-filtered, heat-processed, stripped of pollen, and in many cases cut with corn syrup before it reaches the shelf. Investigations over the last decade found that a shocking amount of grocery store honey does not even qualify as real honey. People are eating sugar water and thinking they are eating what the Bible is talking about. The fix is simple. Real, raw, unfiltered honey, ideally from a local beekeeper you can speak to, is still available. It is darker, cloudier, sometimes crystallizes. A single small spoonful in the morning or stirred into warm herbal tea connects you to a tradition the prophets knew by heart. Use it sparingly. Respect it the way they did. Before we continue, a quick note. Everything shared in this video is for educational and historical purposes only. These foods and their traditional uses are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any condition. Please speak with your doctor before making any meaningful changes to your diet or routine, especially if you have an existing health condition. Now let's get back to it, because meal number 6 is the one that kept entire caravans alive across 1,000 miles of desert. Number 6, dates. Picture this. A man crossing the Arabian desert on foot, no water for miles, temperature over 100 degrees. He has been walking 2 days. What is in his travel pouch? Not bread, not meat, a handful of dates. That is not a romantic image. That is literally how people survived some of the harshest terrain on earth for thousands of years, which is why the city of Jericho was known as the City of Palms. The date palm was a lifeline. A single mature tree could feed a family for months. Here is where it matters for your life. Dates are almost pure natural sugar, but they are balanced with a dense load of potassium, magnesium, copper, and fiber that completely changes how the body processes them. In traditional Bedouin practice, a handful of dates and a cup of goat milk was considered a full meal. It was said to restore a tired traveler in minutes. Now think about what most people reach for when the 3 o'clock crash hits. A candy bar, an energy drink, a coffee with 3 sugars. Then they crash even harder an hour later. Their ancestors had a better answer 4,000 years ago. 3 medjool dates and a handful of almonds. No crash, no inflammation, no regret, just clean, slow, ancient energy. Medjool dates are in almost every grocery store. Cheap, last for months, and they are one of the most immediate ways to bring the biblical kitchen into your real life this week. But if you thought dates were the sweet one on this list, wait until you see what is next, because the next food was carved into the pillars of Solomon's temple. Number 7, pomegranate. If the Bible had a crown jewel of fruits, this is it. The pomegranate was carved into the pillars of Solomon's temple. It decorated the hem of the high priest's robe. It appears throughout the Song of Solomon as an image of beauty and abundance. It was named in Deuteronomy as one of the 7 species that defined the blessing of the land of Israel. So why all the reverence for a single fruit? Crack one open and you will see. Hundreds of jewel-like seeds called arils, each one bursting with sweet and slightly tart juice. This is a fruit that demands attention, and the people of the ancient Middle East ate it whenever it was in season for thousands of years. Here is where it gets interesting. Modern research has quietly uncovered something over the last 2 decades. Pomegranate is one of the most concentrated natural sources of antioxidant compounds called polyphenols on the entire planet. Studies have looked at these compounds in connection with cardiovascular well-being, cellular support, and aging at the molecular level. When a fruit appears in temples, in poetry, in royal gardens, and in modern longevity research thousands of years later, that is not coincidence. That is pattern recognition across civilizations. The modern disconnect is real. Most people have never actually eaten a fresh pomegranate. They have had the juice. They have seen the seeds on a restaurant salad. But sitting down with a whole fresh pomegranate, cracking it open with your hands the way people have for 4,000 years, is an experience almost completely lost to the modern kitchen. Fresh seeds over yogurt, scattered across a grain bowl, a small glass of pure, unsweetened pomegranate juice a few times a week. These are the same habits that kept generations vibrant into their later years. 3 meals left. And meal number 9 is the breakfast Jesus himself cooked on a beach. You are not going to want to miss how simple it actually was. Number 8, almonds. The almond tree was the first tree to blossom every spring in the land of Israel. While the rest of the landscape was still recovering from winter, the almond was already pushing out delicate pink and white flowers, a signal that life was coming back. Forget the symbolism for a second. Here is why this nut actually matters. When Jacob sent his sons back to Egypt in Genesis with a gift for the governor of the land, the gift was not gold, not silver. It was choice produce, and almonds were on the list. That tells you something. Almonds were considered worthy of giving to a head of state. Why? Because they travel well, store well, and carry one of the densest combinations of healthy fats, plant protein, vitamin E, and magnesium in the entire natural world. This is where everything changes. Modern nutritional research has studied almonds extensively, and the findings keep pointing the same direction. Regular consumption is associated with heart health, steady energy, and balanced blood sugar. These are the exact markers that quietly determine how someone ages over decades. And almonds appear in the daily diets of nearly every long-living population in the Mediterranean and Middle East. Not by accident. Here is what the modern snack aisle gets wrong. People reach for processed bars loaded with sugar, seed oils, and ingredients they cannot pronounce and call it healthy. Meanwhile, a small handful of raw almonds is the exact same snack a farmer in ancient Judea ate between tasks. Same food, same effect. Two different worlds. Soak a handful in water overnight, drain them in the morning, peel off the skins, and eat them with a date or two. That practice predates written history, and it is still one of the most grounding ways to start a day. Now let's get to the one that honestly surprises most people when they realize what was actually being eaten. Number 9, grilled fish from the Sea of Galilee. Here is a scene almost everyone has read, but almost nobody has really thought about. After the resurrection, in the Gospel of John, Jesus is standing on the shore of the Sea of Galilee at sunrise, cooking breakfast for his disciples. The text describes the meal in one sentence: fish grilled over an open fire and bread. That is it. The most important figure in Western religious history made breakfast, and this is what he chose. Now stop and think about that. This was not a feast, not an occasion meal. This was the everyday working breakfast of the fishermen who made their living on that lake, and the disciples had eaten it hundreds of times before. Yet it carried some of the most concentrated natural nutrition in the human diet. The fish of Galilee, including species like tilapia and small sardine-type fish, were cleaned, seasoned with salt and wild herbs, and grilled directly over wood or charcoal until the skin was crisp. That preparation delivers a massive dose of omega-3 fatty acids, high-quality protein, and vitamin D. Modern researchers studying coastal and lakeside populations keep finding the same pattern. Communities that eat small, whole, simply prepared fish age dramatically better than the ones that do not. Contrast that with the modern plate. Processed foods, industrial seed oils, meat of questionable quality, protein from a factory instead of a lake. The human body was not designed for that. Rates of inflammation, fatigue, joint problems, and cognitive decline are climbing in every country that has adopted the industrial diet. They are lowest in the communities that still eat the way the disciples ate on that beach. You do not need a boat on the Sea of Galilee to fix this. A small fillet of a sustainably caught variety, grilled with olive oil, sea salt, lemon, and fresh herbs, served with real whole grain bread, is the same meal cooked on that shore 2,000 years ago. 15 minutes. A few dollars. A direct connection to one of the most profound simple meals in recorded history. Hold on for the last one, because meal number 10 is the food most people in the modern world actively avoid, and that may be the exact reason so many people feel the way they feel today. Number 10, bitter herbs of the Passover. Here is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to hear. The modern palate has been trained to love sweetness and avoid bitterness. That is a problem, because for thousands of years, bitter was not a flavor to hide. It was a flavor to honor. And the people who ate bitter foods on purpose every single week were the same people who lived some of the longest, healthiest lives in human history. Every spring during the Passover observance commanded in Exodus, the people of Israel sit down to a plate of bitter herbs as part of the sacred meal. These herbs, known in Hebrew as maror, traditionally include horseradish, chicory, endive, dandelion greens, romaine lettuce, and wild mint. The bitterness was symbolic, a reminder of slavery in Egypt. But the herbs were not just symbols. They were eaten regularly throughout the year, not only at Passover. This is where everything changes. The bitter compounds in these plants gently stimulate the digestive system, support liver function, and in traditional use have been connected to cleansing, digestive wellness, and metabolic balance for thousands of years. Dandelion greens, still eaten in rural communities across Israel today, have a long folk history as a natural support for the liver. Horseradish has been used for the sinuses and respiratory passages for generations. These are not trendy superfoods. These are the quiet, unflashy herbs your great-great-grandmother probably knew by name. The modern diet has almost completely eliminated bitterness from the table. The body is paying the price. Sluggish digestion, overworked liver, out-of-control cravings for sweet and salty food. That is not random. That is a body cut off from one of the oldest and most important flavor profiles in its evolutionary history. Bring it back easily. A salad of mixed bitter greens with olive oil, lemon, and crumbled goat cheese. Sauteed dandelion greens with garlic. A small amount of fresh horseradish on the side of a meal. These are the flavors the prophets knew. These are the flavors Jesus and the disciples ate at the Last Supper. And these are the flavors that quietly supported some of the most resilient generations in recorded history. Here is the thing that ties this entire list together, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every single one of these 10 meals has the same foundation: real food, simple preparation, eaten with intention for thousands of years. No shortcuts, no hacks, no miracle promises, just the quiet wisdom of people who ate what the land gave them and lived long enough to watch their grandchildren grow up. That is the real secret. The modern world traded it away for convenience, speed, and marketing. The good news is none of this is lost. Every food on this list is still available, still affordable, and still waiting for someone with the courage to put it back on the table. Now I have a real question for you, and I want you to actually answer it. Out of these 10 meals, which one are you bringing back into your kitchen this week? Just one. Pick it. Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and your answer might be the thing that inspires someone else watching to do the same. If you know someone who is tired, inflamed, or worn down by the modern diet, share this video with them right now. This is the kind of knowledge that does not reach people through ads or algorithms. It reaches them through you. One share can genuinely change how someone eats for the rest of their life. And listen carefully for this last part. If you made it to the end of this video, you are already in a small group. You are the kind of person who thinks deeper than the crowd, who refuses to accept the modern food story at face value, who actually wants to live long and live strong. That is exactly who this channel is built for. Subscribe to Taste of the Bible right now and turn on the bell. The next video on this channel goes even deeper. It covers one specific food tradition from the Old Testament that almost nobody today knows still exists, and when you see it, it will change how you look at your own kitchen. See you in the next one.